and welcome to Bedtime Stories with CrispySkates. And we're finishing up The Wind in the Willows. Can you believe it? It's been a long road, an enjoyable one, and I very much enjoyed getting to know all of you. And we're going to pick up tomorrow with the Olympians. All right, let's dive in. All conceit and boasting and vanity, and you're speechless, and your speeches are self-praise and well, and gross exaggeration and and gasp in the badger in his own common way. It's for your own good, Toady, went on the rat. You know, you must turn over a new leaf sooner or later, and now seems a splendid time to begin a sort of turning point in your career. Please don't think that saying all of this doesn't hurt me more than it hurts you. Toad remained a long while and plunged in thought. At last, he raised his head, and the traces of strong emotion were visible on his features. You have conquered my friends, he said in a broken accent. It was, to be sure, but a small thing that I asked, merely to have to blossom and expand for yet one more evening, to let myself go and hear the tumultuous applause that always seems to me somehow to bring out my best of qualities. However, you are right. I know I am wrong. Henceforth, I will be a very different Toad. My friends, you shall never have the occasion to blush for me. But, oh dear, this world is a hard world. And pressing his handkerchief to his face and left the room. What? He left the room, flattering footsteps. Badger, said the rat, I feel like a brute. I wonder what you feel like. Aw, thank you, Christina. I appreciate that. That's so sweet of you. Thank you for joining. It is the wind in the willows. Oh, I know, said the badger gloomily. But the thing had to be done. This good fellow has got to live here and hold his own and be respected. You would have done a common laughing stock, mocked and jeered by the stoats and weasels. Of course not, said the rat, and still talking all the weasels. It's lucky we came upon them when the little weasel, just as we did, setting out with Toad's inventions. I suspected from that you told me, and he'd look at one or two. They were simply disgraceful. I confiscated the lot, and the good mole is now sitting in the blue boudoir filling up plain, simple invitation cards. At last, the hour for the banquet began to draw near, and Toad, who was leaving the other, had retired to his bedroom. and still was sitting there, melancholy and thoughtful. His brow resting on his paw, he pondered long and deeply. Gradually, his countenance clear, and he began to smile, a long, slow smile. Then he took to giggling in a shy, self-conscious manner. At last he got up, locked the door, and drew the curtains across the windows, collected all the chairs in the room and arranged them in a semicircle, and took up his position in the front of them, swelling visibly. Then he bowed, coughed twice, and letting himself go, with uplifted voice, he sang into the entrapment's audience that was imaginally so clearly he saw. Toad's little song. Let's sing. Don't leave. Oh, you left. The toad came home. Oh, hi, Chris Taylor. It's nice to meet you. The toad came home. There was a panic in the parlor and howling in the halls. There was a crying in the cowsheds and shrieking in the stalls. When the toad came home, when the toad came home, there was a smashing in the window and a crashing in the door. There was a chiving of the weasels that fainted on the floor. When the toad came home, bang go the drums. The trumpets are tooting, the soldiers are saluting, the cannons they are shooting, and the motor cars are hooting as the hero comes. Shoot, hooray, and let each one of the crowd try and shout it very loud in honor of the animal whom you are justly proud, for it's the toad's great day. He sang this very loud with his great what was it? I'm sorry, unction and expression. And when he had been done, he sang it all over again. Then he heaved a deep sigh, a long, long sigh. Then he heaved and dipped his hairbrush in the water jug, parted his hair in the middle, and plastered it down very straight and sleek on each side of his face, and unlocking the door, went quietly down the stairs to greet his guests. He knew he must be assembling in the drawing room. Hello, River West. This is called The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. It is in the Gutenberg collection. It's over 100 years old. I was in 4th grade the first time I read it, so there's a few things that are a little bit dated here and there, but it's a good read. It's an English author, actually. And tomorrow we're going to dive into the Olympians. And Chris Taylor, are you still around? Oh, you left. Refer to my live for your answer. Mr. Chris Taylor. All right. Shall we continue? Where are we? I'm so sorry, that distracted me. Sorry about that. All the animals cheered when he entered in the crowded room to congratulate him and say very nice things about his courage and his cleverness and his fighting qualities. But Toad only smiled faintly and murmured, "Not at all," or sometimes, For a change, on the contrary, Otter was standing on the hearth rug and describing to an admiring circle of friends exactly how he would have managed things had he had been there. He came forward with a shout, threw his arm around the toad's neck, and tried to take him around the room in a triumphal progress. But the toad, in a mild way, was rather snubby to him, remarkably gently, as he disengaged himself. Badger's was the mastermind. The mole, the water rat bore the brunt of the fighting. I merely served in the ranks and did little or nothing. The animals were evidently puzzled and taken aback by his unexpected attitude, and his toad felt. He moved from one guest to the other, making his modest responses that he was an object of absorbing interest to everyone. The badger ordered everything of the best, and the banquet was a great success. There was much talking and laughter and chaff among the animals, but through it all Toad, who was of course in the chair, looked down his nose and murmured pleasant nothings to the animals on either side of him. Intervals of stole at a glance at the badger and the rat, and always when he looked, they were staring at each other with their mouths open and gave him the greatest satisfaction. Some of the other younger animals, livelier animals, as the evening wore on, got whispering to each other that things were not so amusing and they used to be in the good old days, and there were some knockings on the table and cries of Toad speech, Toad, Toad song, Mr. Toad song. But Toad only shook his head grimly and raised one paw in mild protest, and by pressing his declaracies on his guests by topical small talk, he earnest inquiries after members of their family not yet old enough to appear at the social functions, managed to convey them that his dinner was being run on strictly conventional lines. He was indeed an altered toad. After his climax, the four animals continued to lead their lives, so rudely broken in upon by civil war and great joy, contentment, undisturbed by the further risings or invasions. Toad, after due conclusion with his friends, selected a handsome gold chain and locket with a set of pearls, which he dispatched from the golder's daughter, and with a letter that even the badger admitted to be modest. Grateful and appreciative, the engine driver, in his turn, was properly thanked and compensated for all his pains and trouble. Under the serve compensation from the badger, even the barge woman was, with some trouble, sought out, and the value of her horse discreetly made to good for her. Though the toad kicked terribly on this holding himself to be an instrument of fate, sent to punish the fat woman, mottled arms who couldn't tell the real gentleman when they saw one. The amount involved, it was true, was not very burdensome. The gypsies' valuation being admitted by local assessors to be approximately correct. Sometimes, in the course of a long summer evening, the friends would take a stroll together in the wild wood, now successfully tamed. So far as they were concerned, it was pleasing to see how respectfully they were greeted by the inhabitants, and how the mother weasels would bring their young ones to the mouths of their holes and say, pointing, "Look, baby, there goes the great Mr. Toad, and the gallant water rat, and the terrible fighter walking along him. And yonder comes the famous Mr. Mole, of whom you often have heard your father tell. But when their infants, fractious and quiet beyond control, they would quiet themselves by telling how, and if they didn't hush them and not fret them, the terrible gray badger would up and get them. This was a base libel on Badger, who, though he cared little about society, was rather fond of children, but it never failed to have its full effect. The end. That was a beautiful story, you guys. Until tomorrow night, thanks for the journey over the past month or so. What a beautiful story. I've enjoyed meeting you all and having our nightly chats. It's been wonderful. Until tomorrow night, for the Olympians, keep it crispy. Sweet dreams. Thanks for the light. Good night, everyone.